That's right.
Please stand for the pledge for the town meeting for the February the 3rd. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And everyone put their cell phones on airplane mode or silence them for the meeting, please, so we don't have them go off in the middle of the meeting. Thank you. Upcoming meetings. Parks and Rec meeting will be Tuesday, February the 18th, 7:30. Town Commission meeting will be Monday, February 24th. And the next town council meeting will be March the 2nd at 7:30 p.m. Is there any other meetings that are scheduled and not on here?
Oh, no, Parks and Rec, we changed our time to 7 o'clock.
To 7.
Yeah, then that'll, can we do that legally?
The code
Forever
says
and ever?
7:30.
It's past our bedtime when we get done. How do we do that?
You'd have to require a code change. And,
Oh, dear Lord.
yeah.
Yeah, over TV, all that, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, you can change a few here and there, but if you want to consistently keep it 7 o'clock, then it's going to be required to be a code change. And also kind of keep in the back of your mind, all the calendars are done with 7:30 in it.
All the printed calendars.
Okay, well, I got a good participation. I had like 7 members there, so I was tickled with that. They just asked to move it up to 7 o'clock, but
That's a good turnout.
okay.
Yeah, I mean, you can change, I mean, if you're going to want to do
We'll
it
work it out.
consistently, it's an easy code change.
Okay, we'll work it out.
Okay.
Any other meetings? Moving on. Approval of meeting minutes for January the 6th. And January 22nd, we will do one at a time, January 6th.
Yes.
Any changes or corrections or amendments to the meeting minutes for January the 6th? Hearing none, I need a motion to accept the meeting minutes as presented.
I make a motion to accept the meeting minutes as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
Sorry, sir.
Motion's been made by Commissioner Burns, second by Commissioner Davis. All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
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 Aye. Any nays? Motion carries 5-0. January 22nd meeting. Is there any correction, amendments to the meeting minutes as presented?
I had none.
No, sir.
Hearing none, I need a motion to accept the meeting minutes for January 22nd as presented.
I present a motion to accept the meeting minutes from January 22nd as presented.
Motion's been made by Commissioner Burns, there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Ritz. All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any nays? Motion carries 5-0. Police report. Officer.
Good evening, guys. How are you?
Good, how are you?
So,
Good. It's a monthly report for January. Started out, we had 0 burglaries, 4 noise complaints, 7 suspicious activities. They resulted in nothing. 0 assaults, 1 assist other police agency. Had 1 theft reported. I think it was from a theft from auto. Lock your doors, please. Juvenile complaint 0. Frauds 2. Alarms 5. Assist the fire department once. Destruction of property once. Disorderly conducts, we had 5 of those. 0 trespasses, 16 911 hangups. We opened up 17 talks cards, 7 walking patrols, 121 patrol checks, 0 bike patrols. We conducted 137 stops, 58 citations were issued, 147 warnings, 3 SROs, or SEROs, 2 complaints, 1 parking complaint. Parking citations, we issued 0. Selective enforcements, we did 12 of them. We had 5 collisions in town. We had 3 traffic arrests, 0 criminal arrests, 0 juvenile arrests. We issued 4 warrants and served 4 warrants. Criminal summons were 1. Curfew violation 0. Municipal violation 0. And we have some pending charges out there. We assisted with funeral assist in a town meeting on the 6th and the 22nd. We conducted 3 search and seizure warrants served in the month, resulting in various charges, including weapons and narcotics possessions. Locations were the Square, South Seaton, and Stonehurst Court. Complaints about the flaggers at the bridge were monitored. They're doing a good job. Just drivers being impatient. Me and Ben had 3 court days. You guys have any questions?
Any questions?
The noise complaints, were they Mount St. Mary's related, or
One was Mount St. Mary's.
referred it back to them? And
The other ones were the apartments up on the corner.
okay, and Mount St. Mary's is working with you with
Yeah,
that.
yeah, getting taken care of. Complaints for the Mount students have went down drastically.
Great.
Any collision events related to the bridge work or any of the other?
No,
construction? Great.
these are all just people not paying attention.
Okay, thank you.
And I'd like to thank you all for the 3 drug arrest and seizure warrant servants there. That's you're trying to clean the town up. We know there's more, but that's great to have 3 in 1 week like that. So.
Yes, sir. We'll keep working at it.
I have a question on that, actually.
Yeah,
Yes, sir.
Mr. Ritz?
The South Seaton and Stonehurst, which were in the same day, I noticed there wasn't anything in the paper yet. Is there something ongoing?
That's an ongoing investigation, sir. I can't comment on that right now.
Just making sure. Okay,
But something will come out eventually.
great. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you. Any other questions? Great, thank you, Mr. Officer. Town managers report.
Good evening. It's the Town Manager's Report for December of 2019. I'll just highlight some key areas. Related to streets, staff assisted with the Christmas tree lighting event. They helped the elementary students decorate the town Christmas tree out front, repainted the Silo Hill Parkway median strip, and they repainted a curb at the end of Welty Avenue. Related to parks, staff winterized the community park restroom building. Related to water, Rainbow Lake is currently at its spillway level of 16.6 feet. The roughing filters are being backwashed 2 times a day, and DEs are done once a week. That's pretty good for us. They addressed, as everybody knows, water quality complaints throughout the month of December. There you'll see the highlighted well levels. For water production, we produced an average of 273,445 gallons per day and consumed approximately 234,369 gallons per day, the difference being backwash water at 15.3%. We were able to get back to our goal of 50% from the lake in the month of December. We were able to get 63.5% of the water from Rainbow Lake in the month of December. We purchased 440,150 gallons of water from the Mount in December. Related to wastewater, we received 5.0 inches of precipitation that month. We currently have a surplus of 2.25 inches over the last 6 months. At the wastewater treatment plant, we treated an average of 745,000 gallons per day, consumed 234,369, which means 69.9% of the wastewater treated in December was wild water. We had no spills of untreated sewage in the month of December. However, we did have one in the month of January, on January 25th. We had heavy rainfall. We received about 2.2 inches of rain in approximately 4 hours. The pump had shut off due to a high alarm, and the station did not switch to the backup pump. This caused a spillage, which was estimated at a combined total of 5,000 gallons lost out of 3 manholes on 2nd Avenue, North Seaton, and South Seaton Avenue between at Creamery Road. The pump was off for approximately 30 minutes. MDE has been notified. It's a good thing that we're currently in the process of acquiring funding for the new pump station, and one of the new pumps was just overhauled. Pump number 1, again, the pump station was pulled, rebuilt, and reinstalled in December. The wastewater treatment plant ran smoothly, and the permit parameters were met or lower than permitted. Trash will remain Mondays in the month of February. Again, there's highlighted meetings that I attended. Just some noteworthy items. The town was awarded an $8,500 grant through MML for promotion of the census. The staff inspected curb boxes in the area of the bridge project. And then the 8-inch mountain water main coming down the mountain has been turned off. And they also installed the new blow off on Riffle Road in December. And that's all I have.
Any questions for town staff at this time?
I had one.
Yep, Mr. Ritz.
The 8533 Hampton Valley Road, is that our property?
Yes.
Okay. And that's
around-
up near the water,
Plant, yes.
it's up near Crystal Fountain.
Yes. That's correct.
Any other questions for staff? Hearing none, we'll move on. Town planners report, Zach.
Hello, everybody. This is the Town Planners Report for December 2019. I'm also going to highlight some key areas for the month. Under the Commissioners, I prepared the following items for the January Commissioners meeting: the Stand 6 logging bid, the ordinances 1907 and 1908, the baseball field reservation policy, ordinance 20-01 and resolution 20-04, which were all passed last month. Under grants, I continue to work with property owners on the new round of community legacy grant applications. We still have about $25,000 unallocated for the year, so please keep applying. Under community development block grant, I continue to work on this grant application, which is due in around June. I applied for a Frederick County fiscal year 21 grant in the amount of a little over $100,000 to act as our local match. I prepared a resolution 20-05, which we will discuss at the next meeting, and also a proclamation for the next meeting. I submitted our community legacy quarterly report. I created maps for the town clerk for the pump station grant, prepared an RFP, and started working on the Chesapeake Bay Trust grant application for a North Seaton Avenue Green Street conceptual plan. Under MS4, created and published the contractor request for proposals for the Silo Hill Stormwater Management Basin Restoration Project, which we'll be discussing tonight, and continued working with Streamlink Education and Daughters of Charity regarding future tree plantings, which I'll also discuss tonight. I processed 5 zoning permit applications and 6 cross-connection permit applications. Amy continued to file documents in the property folders and miscellaneous document organization. Under Planning Commission, I attended the Planning Commission meeting on the 17th and prepared the 2019 Annual Planning Commission report, which you'll review tonight. Under Miscellaneous, Amy and I attended a Frederick County meeting on the 4th regarding their new permitting software, and we continued office and file organization. Any questions?
Any questions for the town planner at this time?
Just one.
Commissioner Ritz.
Any more updates on Emmett Ridge? I know you met with some potential developers. How we stand on that?
I reached out to the gentleman probably a week ago, and he said he's still doing his study, and that's the end of what I know.
Okay.
So we're hoping it goes through.
Any other questions?
No, sir.
Hearing none, we'll move on. Thank you, Zach. Commissioner comments? Commissioner O'Donnell?
Yes, sir. Thank you. Good evening. Monday last week, I was able to attend an event at the Gettysburg Community Park. There was a meeting where a professional consultant hired by an organization in Gettysburg was giving feedback related to a pedestrian route from Gettysburg to Emmitsburg. The consultant delineated a few options, and a final route recommendation has not come forward, but their goal is to, on their end, independent of us, link to us. And I agree there's a lot of value to that. I was attending the meeting, as I said, with the mayor. It was very well attended, and there was mostly an enthusiastic crowd. Some folks concerned were worried about their land being taken, but they were made very aware that no land whatsoever will be taken from any individuals. I was able to attend on Saturday evening, the Moore meeting, where one of our volunteers, Tony Geip, was recognized for his volunteer service. He was awarded a plaque from that organization. Also attending that event was the president of the International Mountain Biking Association, and we were the only group that gave him a gift bag, so he knows Emmitsburg, and he promised to promote us, and that's good. It's not often one gets to meet somebody who beat Lance Armstrong in a bike race, and he'd done it 3 times, so he's got my vote. Beyond that, I heard very positive feedback from a variety of sources of their interactions with town staff related to the water issues. I heard one criticism from an individual, but I think the situation has improved on their end. And I heard other compliments related to town staff's behavior in other services related to billing and some documentation. So, town staff, 9 out of 10, good job, well done. And keep it up, please. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Mr. Ritz?
Just to thank Commissioner Davis for all he's done for Emmitsburg baseball. I'm sure he'll touch on that after me. And looking forward to having some recreational baseball and softball for our youth again. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Davis?
That's the first thing on my list. We continue to make progress with baseball, softball in Emmitsburg. Most of it is joining in with Thermont. Registration is open right now, so make sure you get the kids registered. The schedules aren't completely finished yet, but looks like Thermont Little League Baseball will be playing up here at least 3 days a week, Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and half days on Saturdays. So we will have some baseball back in town, even though it's the Thermont League. And everybody's really, really excited about that. So much so, the CYA, which is the Catoctin Youth Association, which kind of does all the other sports things that the Emmitsburg youths are involved in. I met with them Sunday evening and then again the past Friday. They want to bring some of their activities to Emmitsburg since we have so many kids that are participating. So they want to get Emmitsburg more involved. Don't know how much we can do with actual sports, but some of their activities, such as they're looking to do a big Easter egg hunt that they'd want to do, one in Thermont, one in Emmitsburg, switch things back and forth, and things like that. So we're starting to come together as one, which I've always hoped we could. So we're looking good there. So that's all I got.
Thank you, Mr. Davis. Mr. Burns?
Good evening. Just a quick update. Had my meeting with the Citizens Advisory Committee on January 21st. We're looking for new members for the committee. If anybody knows anybody that was looking to volunteer, our goal is to try to get a member from each neighborhood, including the provincial house, so that we have representation from every neighborhood. We had some good ideas and ideas about how to improve relationships with Mount St. Mary's and different things that we can do around town as well. So we're going to continue to work on that as we go forward. Thanks.
Thank you. I just have a couple. The Emmitsburg Lions Club would like to, and the Heritage Day Committee would like to open the concession stand up for the Little League. And in conjunction with the pool, it would run through the Little League through June and then switch right over to the pool. And the money we'll be making will be going towards the community day and the fireworks and stuff like that. So they're interested in doing that. Mr. Davis said everything's in there except for we just need to get a refrigerator and stuff put in there for ice cream and stuff, for a little freezer. I need to ask a question about, do you know how much ball field mix and stuff did we have? Do we have money back for all that to be put on the field since we're going to start the Little League again?
Just emailed Commissioner Davis about that. There is a pile of ball field mix back at the stockpile that's available for their use. I don't know if they need any more or not. They were going to take a look at it, and then I think we had enough money left in the budget for one more load if need be.
Do we have any other money left that he can use for parks if we need anything for the Little League?
I don't have it in front of me.
How do you know?
He wouldn't know.
Okay.
How big of a freezer do you need?
Just a small one.
Yeah, it's just little things like they talked about doing away with the key locks on the dugouts and maybe putting the push button locks on. That way at the end of the year, you change the combination. If you lose people, you don't have to round up keys. If somebody forgets their keys or whatever, we can just, it's easier access and easier control, and things
Yeah,
like that.
they're all keyed with the 21 key, which is the master key for the staff. So,
Yes, I didn't know if we had any money that we could put the push button locks on, or, I'm trying to get some donations from the town, which
Right.
I'm very, very fortunate. Just had a family from Thurmont donate a brand new John Deere tractor. Brand new, It's just, and it's just, it's
Commissioner
great. So-
Davis.
there is, I'm sorry, there is money set aside. We applied for new bleachers, a grant through program Open Space or Community Park and Playground for new bleachers over at the ball field where the concession stand is. We're just waiting notification on that. So there is some money in, I believe, Fund 2 that can go to the ball fields. But as far as general fund, I don't know off the top of my head how much money's in there.
Okay.
And I'm going to ask the Legion 2 and the VFW, if they, since they all sponsor Little League teams, that if they would like to donate a refrigerator or microwave, we could use 2 microwaves, because everything's going to be just like the pool, just going to be processed food we just heat up.
Right, and the
Pizzas
new
and
budget will
stuff.
take effect July 1, so if there's not enough money prior to July 1 added, we can add more money to the ball field line going forward.
Commissioner Davis, I will, we'll talk later, but consider my family donating their freezer for you.
Great.
We'll take care of that.
Thank you. Any other questions? Hearing none. Public comment.
Mayor's comment.
I'm sorry. I skipped the mayor again. Sorry.
Freudian.
I know you want me to
Freudian.
skip you.
Okay. Good evening. Thank you. Just a recap of some of the events I attended in January. I attended the Vigilant Hose Banquet, in which the town, on behalf of the town, we presented a check for $6,000 for all their wonderful service and to our community. Commissioner Burns and myself met with many of the administration officials at Mount St. Mary's on the 7th. We had a wonderful meeting here with the Boy Scouts. Our staff met with them about their spring project that they're planning here in town, and met with President Traynor at the Mount on the 17th, with Cole Tabler and Terry Ray, our town office manager. We went over and took a look at the security operations that they have over at Carroll Valley. They have a new physical plant for their offices and combined with their library and everything else, and just to perk on some of those ideas that they have, and maybe things we should definitely do here. Attended the State of the Mount presentation by President Traynor. He's so in a wonderful way out there in front of this thing. It's going to be a wonderful university here, and they do have plans for a graduate program here in town, and it would be directed towards the medical assistants, physician's assistants, and start out maybe 40 to 60 and end up with 400 students, grad students downtown here. So that's just one of many things they have. With the town staff, we met with Drew Bowen, the Emmitsburg, the Middletown manager, and had a good discussion on discolored water. I think just going down there, some of the regular things. I attended at Gettysburg Area Recreation Authority, and we got a little press on that for being there with Commissioner O'Donnell. They had been down here about a year ago and met with some of us here in the office, and then there was a wonderful meeting with Commissioner O'Donnell. If I could, Mr. President, I have a couple of things I'd like to present to people at this time. Is that okay with you?
Yes.
Okay.
Right.
This is an awkward room to present things, so I sort of come down here and have different people come up, and I'm going to start off with a gentleman in the back of the room, Roger Wilson. Would you get up here and introduce?
I thought he was going to last.
Okay, yeah, I hope excuse me if I'm standing there. Okay. Up here. Don't let hands, you maybe go over here. I don't know how we work this microphone. We'll try it.
Let's try.
For you, who don't know Roger Wilson, he is the Director of Community Governmental Affairs for the county, and he has been for several years, and
Last week, by the way.
and he's been a true friend of everything here in Emmitsburg. And he is also an elected official, an alderman with the city of Frederick. And I
Yeah, you
think
give
one
it to
day
me, I can go
to
get it.
hear from you on the state level in other directions. But on behalf of everybody back here, we do appreciate Eric and our staff over here, that we just appreciate everything you've done. If I may just read this. A proclamation honoring Roger A. Wilson for his 5 years of service to the town of Emmitsburg. Whereas Roger A. Wilson began his service as Director of Government Affairs and Public Policy for the County Executive Office in December 2014. And whereas Mr. Wilson's role has allowed him to serve as a liaison to Frederick County's 12 municipalities, including the town of Emmitsburg, as well as Frederick County delegation and county council. And whereas through his 5 years of service, Mr. Wilson has been an integral link between the town of Emmitsburg and the county executive's office through his availability and knowledge. Whereas Mr. Wilson was the first director of governmental affairs for the county executive's office, serving to set the standard high for successors. And whereas the Board of Commissioners, the town staff, Emmitsburg community generally greatly have benefited from your service, Mr. Wilson. Now therefore be it proclaimed that the Mayor, Board of Commissioners of the town of Emmitsburg, Maryland, do hereby express our sincere and grateful appreciation to Mr. Wilson for his 5 years of service, and do hereby extend our best wishes to him in his future endeavors. We look forward to the remarkable achievements to come and wish him success, happiness, and good health, adopted the 3rd day of February 2020.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, step to the side.
Okay, you gotta help me, you gotta help me on
Yeah,
that.
no problem. These are what you call stage.
Drop down a little bit. Look a little thinner, do something.
All right, thank you.
All right, now I'm not through with you, you're gonna help me.
Okay.
We got a couple of people here that we're give recognition to. Man, if you would help me out, we have two wonderful scouts here, and the first one I drew was Mr. Lowe, Thomas Lowe. Would you please come forward and would you read that?
Sure.
Thank you. Are you good?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
All right, no, that's fine.
Very good to see you. All right. Well, this is a certificate of congratulations presented to Thomas Lowe, Eagle Scout Troop 727. The town of Emmitsburg would like to congratulate Mr. Lowe on his outstanding achievement and exceptional leadership ability evidenced by his attainment of the rank of Eagle Scout, which only 4% of Scouts have earned since the inception of the Boy Scout of America in 1911. We're confident that the attributes exhibited in earning this award will ensure success for you throughout your life. Congratulations on your hard work and achievement. Best of luck on your future endeavors. Presented this 3rd day of February 2020. Signed, Mayor Don Briggs and the Board of Commissioners President, Mr. Clifford Sweeney. All right. Okay.
We got one more. All right.
Should like to get a picture. Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, read it one more.
Okay.
All right.
All right. Okay, you're gonna have
Maybe do a group one.
Matthews.
Matthews.
Buckheister.
Okay. All right. How you doing, Matt? Doing good. Okay. Buckheister. Okay. Certificate of congratulations presented to Matthews Buckheister, Eagle Scout Troop 727. And I'm not going to read it again, but congratulations on your achievement and your hard work. Well deserved. And we look forward to future leadership positions in this county and elsewhere in this state. Congratulations. Thank you.
Very good.
Mr. Mayor, can I get a picture of you with both of them?
Sure. You stay up here.
Okay.
Our man.
Yep. Here, give it between.
Roses between the thorns.
Frank, smile.
Thank you, guys, very much.
I will.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson.
Save me a seat at MML.
Front row, middle of the room. Right there.
Hey.
Thank you, Tim.
He forgot you. Is that all you got, Mr. Mayor?
That's it for you.
Okay.
Thank you, guys, very much.
Thank you. Okay, now we're on to public comments. Manny, is there any public comment? Steven? Diane Warbacker?
Get the mic back. Diane Walbrecker, 535 West Main Street. I have one announcement and comment, and then I'd also like to ask a question if I could. The announcement is that EMI, the Emergency Management Institute, is having a course called Recovery from Disasters, the Local Community Role, on March 16th through 19th. I just sent our town planner an invitation to the course. It's free, and I hope that you guys will support him attending the course. It's important to plan for recovery before the disaster. Now, like the disaster that we had at Stavros when all the apartments went up in flames, there was a lot of good cooperation in the town because we all knew each other. But if we hadn't, and there were even some missteps in that recovery, if we hadn't known each other, if we hadn't already had those relationships, it would have been harder for us to recover from that disaster. So it's important to get a plan in place before our community faces that kind of disaster. So I'm hoping you guys will support Zach being able to attend that, and I know it's up to the mayor and the town staff. But anyway, the other thing is, I told somebody coming in today that I always sign up for public comments and I put not applicable under the topic, because I think if you're on the list, you can talk about anything. Is that true or not?
Absolutely.
That's correct.
Okay, so anybody who wants to come to a town meeting, put your name down in case you want to talk about a topic and you're not even sure yet what it is. So,
Doesn't have to be on the agenda.
right. Thank you very much.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Diane.
Diane.
Mr.
Diane, I got a
Davis?
question for you. Not only do I support what you want to do for Zach, but there are some courses out there that would probably be good for the entire town staff.
I agree.
And I'd like to see if you could try to find which one would suit Emmitsburg the best, because it takes, it's from everybody from the trash collector to, to the funeral home director, that we be prepared for something that would happen, and we could, so if you could do that for us.
Kind of look through that and
Yeah.
maybe get you guys some targeted announcements.
Yeah, because we don't have to go anywhere. I mean, people come from all over the country to take that class. I think it'd be great that we do that, so.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions for Diane? No. Okay, the next person on the agenda thing here is Charles Fuller. Fuller?
Good evening, Mayor, Commissioners. Again, Charles Fluke, 3000 Stonehurst Drive, Emmitsburg. Here to discuss the brown water. Again, wasn't planning on speaking, but I noticed a lack of speakers signed up as I walked in, so I figured I would at least voice myself, and thank you, ma'am.
He's the one I talked
Yes, ma'am. So I guess the first thing is, does Emmitsburg conduct a secondary, the water testing utilizing the secondary standards as recommended by the EPA, which gives us our thresholds, if you will, for iron, copper, other 15 other minerals and stuff? Do you know?
I had to defer to Kathy. Kathy?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, we do. And are we elevated higher than what their recommended standards are for the
No.
iron stuff? No?
No.
Okay.
And Yeah, go ahead.
No, you're fine.
No, I got a lot of that in the water quality update.
Yes,
but
ma'am.
Go ahead.
Then a lot of these
No,
may
go
be
ahead.
addressed later, so, again, forgive me if they are. Secondly, have we developed an immediate short-term and long-term plan? Very good, so I'll wait to hear about that as well. So, that's fine. And then, since 2004, again, from the last meeting, we know some issues with the pipes, the growth, for lack of a better word, within the piping system. Have we had plans to replace this piping in the past that maybe were bumped off the table due to money and getting pushed down the line, or are we proposing, do we have a strategic plan in place for pipe replacement that, as it comes up? This is not new to us. It shouldn't be new to us. We have 50-year pipe. We have 100-year pipe. We should be planning for replacement of this pipe on a schedule to include our budgeting for that. And I'm just wondering why, again, 2004, it was commented last meeting that the growth was noted, and now we're in 2019, 2020 now, and 4 months into the brown water again, and we still don't have a plan ahead, and we may have one
We do,
established.
and
Okay.
just to briefly answer, we did spend about $128,000 replacing the water line during the square project from the square up North Seaton. Staff recently replaced a small piece of line on DePaul Street, and somebody correct me if I'm wrong, was it East Lincoln, West Lincoln, that some line was replaced? So I'll go over that tonight. We do have some targeted areas. We do have a plan moving forward.
Okay.
I can't speak to prior management
Mm-hmm.
on why or why not things were done.
We have been working on the infrastructure, not only the water, but we're working on the sewer also, because if you heard earlier from the report, the wastewater treatment plant was flooded again. We're trying to get the pipes replaced with the sewer and water at the same time. It just, if the sewer stops running, then
Sure.
everybody
Yep.
suffers.
And I noticed from your 2008 plans that was out there, as well as our growth rate with capacity rate kind of match at 2015 was like the magic year. And we're now again at 2020, to where your prediction at that time put us above that. I didn't know if we were still below our output versus input, if we're exceeding that, if we're,
I'm not exactly sure.
I'm not sure either.
what
I
he's
don't think so,
talking
because we
about.
haven't had real development since of housing.
Yep.
We've had just a few, but not too
Yep.
many. So we
Again, it was
shouldn't have
projected
exceeded it.
from 2008,
Yeah, 'cause
so.
we expected Pembroke,
There's no complaint from
Brookfield to finish
15.
out,
Yep.
and
There's-
Emmitsburg too, but they stagnated.
There was a new comp plan in 2015, so I don't know if you've
Okay.
taken a look
I
at
did
that,
not see
because the
that one, no.
numbers,
Okay.
numbers have changed since 2015
Okay.
also.
Thank you, ma'am. All right.
Just to follow
Yes,
up with you, after the last meeting on the 22nd, I spoke at length with one of the Maryland State delegates about this, and what she and I discussed is we're not the only ones facing this issue of where it got pushed down the road, and it's statewide, where everybody's like, oh, we'll get to it, we'll budget it in, and everybody's kick the can down the road. And I think right now we have that plan in place where we're actually attacking this, whereas other municipalities are like, we'll get to it. But it's not just isolated here in Emmitsburg. I know Middletown had issues down in Bethesda, all those areas as well. And it's a state level where the delegates are now hearing about it and having to face this as
And
well.
are we consulting with the other town communities
Yes,
to
I
determine?
think that was part
Yes,
of
I will
the Middletown.
have
and-
a report
I'll
from
wait to hear.
Middletown
Okay.
also.
All right.
Have a
Mr.
report.
Sweeney,
Yes, Mr. O'Donnell.
is it okay to add something?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. To your question regarding setting priorities, town staff has dug in on that, and they've come forward with it. They're communicating that tonight. I know you know that. Regarding priorities of the board in the past, the state of Maryland mandated a different standard for water cleanliness in our wastewater treatment, and therefore we put a great deal of energy and money into the development of a brand-new wastewater treatment plant. So at that time, we were trying to address, let's call it the effluence issue.
Yep.
But we also understood that once that was settled, and it's still a process, the fresh water lines, that's something that's going to get attention. And that process had already begun. So that's where you hear about staff talking about replacement of the water lines on the square and on Main Street going up to North Seaton. So there has been, quote unquote, a vision and certainly a strategic plan for it, short term and long term. And the short term, I can't speak to it for staff, but what we've witnessed as a board at the present and in the past is staff will address any issue within minutes because the bulk are in town. So when there's a crisis regarding water, they address it post haste. Okay. So I hope that adds some comfort and clarity.
And one last question, if I may, is there any plan have we called in, again, I'm sure you've had people look at the piping, technical engineers and stuff like that. Have we looked at a short-term fix of, lack of a better word, the rotor-rooter of the piping to help cleanse some of the sediment that's accumulated in there? I know it's probably going to actually make the problem worse than better.
We have had discussions about that, and in staff's opinion and the experts that we've spoken to, the 3 sections that we want to target, it's not worth the relining because it's small.
Okay.
So,
Very good.
yeah, we're looking at everything.
All right. Thank you. I look forward to your report. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. There's no other ones on the public comment, so we'll move on. Has everybody spoken who wanted to speak and signed this paper to speak?
Yes.
Anybody? Okay, I won't ask again.
Excuse me.
Okay, administrative business. Filing of the 2019 Planning Commission report. Zach?
Okay, so this is the 2019 Planners Commission report. This was approved by the Planning Commission last month. I won't go into great detail because basically it's just filing it with the board. No votes needed. So just a head nod, basically.
Okay. We have a consensus to, for him to file the report, yes, everyone? Good. Good.
Yes, sir.
That's it.
All right, thank you, Zach. Water quality report,
Okay.
Kathy?
So basically, I put together just basically an update of everything that we've pretty much done since the last workshop on January 22nd. Staff has been very busy in the short 10-day or so turnaround. I will note that we have not had any complaints in the last 10 days regarding discolored water. In fact, we've heard from a couple of people that their water is clear. So I'll go over some of the things that we've done, the discussions that we've had, the direction staff would like to go in. Most of these things, however, will have to, are action items that once we get more information will have to be brought back to the board for approval. So MDE, as you know, we've been in constant contact with MDE since this started. MDE sent a sampler to town on January 29th to gather samples from several residents that have had ongoing problems, as well as the wastewater or the water treatment plant, and several hydrants. We're still awaiting test results from MDE. However, when they did take samples, all the samples were clear at the time of sampling. They're going to be testing for iron, manganese, lead and copper, bacteria, turbidity, pH, and chlorine levels. As you can see, I listed the 8 locations where they pulled samples from. And you can tell that they were from the chronic problems. Number 2, the Waynesboro pike replacement, as we've discussed, and as an agenda item, it's a last agenda item. I need board approval to finish the waterline work, waterline replacement, under the road. They are going to be able to bore underneath the road, and they're going to install a new 6-inch line under the roadway for a total cost of $23,800. Work will begin after we get board approval. Track road water line, as soon as the weather breaks, a new line will be installed out there for about $6,800. I'm freezing. We met with the town manager from Middletown who came up and sat down with Dan and I and looked through a lot of our distribution lines and went over the problems that they had in Middletown. And one thing that we noticed collectively was the locations of our pressure reducing valves. You have one located on Fraley Road, which is at the base of the mountain where all the line comes in, and you also have one on Brookfield Road, or out in Brookfield, excuse me. So we went out and took a look at the valve on Fraley Road. We found that the screen was clogged and it was not oscillating properly. It was not maintaining pressure as stable as it should have been. And basically, your pressure reducing valve has to oscillate smoothly, and it has to do open and closes. It controls the flow. So when the screen was clogged, it's not oscillating correctly. We're not getting the flow through town. We ordered a new pilot regulator. And then Brookfield, we ordered a new diaphragm and the bypass to slow down and smooth it out. Once we did that, things have seemed to really progress. These newer, once we install the diaphragm and then the regulator, that pressure reducing valve is going to smooth out even more, which is going to control the flow. You're going to have a lot less coming through your line then. Again, we met with the town manager from Middletown. They had a similar problem in 2013. They took a bunch of different steps. One of the steps they did do was offer filters to a select group of people that met a certain criteria. And it has to be verified brown water. It has to be within the area of concern. Brown water during normal water system conditions, not related to flushing or other system uses. And you had to have continual or multiple incidents of brown water. The filters were purchased by the town, installed by the town plumber, and the filters must be recommended filters by an engineer to meet the specific microns. They installed an iron and manganese removal system at the wastewater, or at their water treatment plant. We don't believe that's necessary. And they obtained a loan through Department of Community Housing Development to pay for their water lines. So after that meeting, I had a conversation with Charlie Day at DCHD to discuss our options. Basically, what they do is they offer state government bond offerings to assist smaller municipalities fund larger infrastructure projects. They can fund inside and outside of the priority funding area. Emmitsburg would be eligible for a fixed rate loan up to 30 years. The rate right now is 3.15%. They've worked with multiple municipalities in Frederick County. And then they have an online application and they could issue funds as early as spring of 2020. USDA has funding available through loans and grants. The intermediate rate is 2.25% with a 40-year payback. If eligible, we could qualify for up to 75% grant and a rate as low as 1.625%. USDA does not fund anything outside of your priority funding area. Senator Huff, I had a couple of conversations with Senator Huff, and so did the mayor. He reached out to MDE on our behalf. MDE recommended we apply for funding for our water lines. Staff scrambled to have that grant submitted by January 31st. We may be eligible for grant or loan, it should read loan forgiveness. We submitted for the North Seaton Avenue and DePaul Street, which I'll go over below. The reason you haven't seen the pushes from MDE and other agencies is because it's not a health concern, and that's why you haven't seen the immediate action. All our primary levels are well within the acceptable limits of MDE and EPA. Frederick County, we had a meeting with Frederick County. They issued their report. I believe everybody has a copy of that. I'll basically summarize what our conference call with them was and what is contained in that report. Basically, what they've said is the raw water quality has changed recently. So the raw water from the lake and the wells has changed. The combined source, it's become aggressive. However, when it leaves the treatment plant, the quality has improved significantly. So for example, it's a 3.0 going in the plant, it's coming out of the plant, and these are just random numbers at a 0.6. So our treatment process is doing its job. It's treating the water, but the water unfortunately has changed over the last couple of months. Making the finished water still slightly aggressive. We need to get to a stable point consistently where we can control basically the pH at the plant. Again, the clarifier will help immensely with the raw water that's coming into the plant. After conversations with the county and staff and other entities, looking at a short-term plan, we need to increase our pH levels, which is basically your alkalinity, which causes the water to be corrosive in these sections of line that are that may be possibly unlined or corrosive. The addition of orthophosphate, both 1 and 2, are in conjunction or with MDE's guidance. We've already reached out to MDE to get their guidance on certain levels. Better testing the Langelier Stability Index. That's basically testing the stability of your water. Currently, our staff does not have that capability to test it every day. So the purchase of a TDS meter will help them regulate the water on a daily basis and be consistent with it. The addition of an automatic chemical feed with feedback loop, that will help along with the TDS meter, and that will work together so that you are always having the correct amounts leaving the plant, and then once the water gets to town, they should be the same levels. We're going to repair both of the pressure reducing valves, and the county has suggested, and we're going to talk to MDE about this, about additional lead and copper testing while we currently are working through the problem. All our levels have always been well below. In September and December, we tested lead and copper. All the levels were below normal. Long-term plan would be the replacement of water lines that have tuberculation. There is funding out there that's available to the town through MDE, through USDA, combination grants, combination loans. Looking at the priority areas, North Seaton Avenue, which is a 4-inch line. The estimated cost for construction loan is about $1.13 million.
Is that upgrading it to a 6-inch line or a 10-inch?
No, it'll still be a 4-inch line.
I have a question.
I don't have the estimates with me.
No, not that.
Okay,
If you keep it at a 4-inch line, there will not be no fire service.
okay.
You need to
Our
have at least-
estimates are from 2 separate contractors.
Okay.
So I can certainly bring that to their attention, but
You have to have at least 6-inch or bigger for the fire
one am I on,
fire
North
hydrants
Seaton?
to work.
no, that's what it currently is. Forgive me, that's what it currently is a 4-inch line. It will be 8-inch. So it'll be upgraded
So
to
you're going
8-inch.
up- which is good.
So that's what it currently
Which
is.
Waynesboro
Waynesboro Pike. Waynesboro Pike is not eligible for MDE or USDA funding as it is out of town and not in the priority funding area. It is in bad shape and it leaks. That one's estimated at about $750,000, not including engineering fees. DePaul Street is a 4-inch line, which is in bad shape. That one's estimated about $1.125 million. And then there are 3 other lines that would be further down on the priority list once these 3 were done. Discussions with the mayor and discussions that we can have as a board. Since Waynesboro Pike is not eligible for USDA or MDE funding, it may be an option to look at a DCHD loan. We believe this one there is our priority. And we already submitted for funding for North Seaton and DePaul Street. We currently have 2 pending infrastructure projects. The Creamery Road Pump Station, we've already submitted for MDE funding, and our preliminary engineering report and our engineering report were approved by USDA Friday. And that project's estimated to cost $2.5 million. The clarifier, the grant was submitted to MDE on, and that should read January 31st of 2020. That's estimated to cost $80,000. And this was just a caution that conversations I've had with Kendra, which is Kendra Harmon, she's with USDA.
80 or 800?
800,000. Did I say 80? My apologies. 800,000. Yeah, I wish. If a large sum of money is pulled from our reserves, the town may not be eligible for certain loans due to change in financial standing. And that's the same conversation I had with Charlie Day at DCHD. The town is in very good financial standing right now. So basically, our credit worthiness is outstanding. We'll want to keep it that way. They want to make sure that we can pay back any of our loans. And then I just highlighted, which the audit report will go over, what our water budget currently looks at or stands. Overall, we have $439,000 in cash in the water fund. However, $259,000 of that's allocated in the water budget for improvements, which could be used. We're expecting about $56,000 in tap fees from Rudders by June. We received $46,000 from logging of stand 5, and if logging stand 6 is approved, we expect about $30,000. That's the update.
Any questions for town staff?
Yes, sir.
Commissioner O'Donnell?
Was there any speculation or thought as to what's changing the pH at Rainbow Lake?
No. We could, it could be anything. It could be the sediment from the mountain area. It could be the change in climate. It could be temperature change. Right now, there's no speculation on it.
Okay. The conversations that were had with Senator Huff at the state level, was there any hypothesizing that there's going to be more funding forthcoming, like grant funding or loan monies made available?
This was what the grant we applied for, was what he recommended and MDE recommended.
But I mean, like, did he say that he's going to try to foster something through?
No.
No, not at this time? Okay. And the other question, I'm sorry, I'm on back a day on my notes. To Mr. Sweeney. Mr. Sweeney, as you are the resident expert in to some degree related to this, do the priorities that are presented here for the long-term plan align with what your experience is?
Yes.
Great.
Well,
Okay.
they have short-term in line. They have all ready to go, and then the long-term, you can't fix it overnight. It takes a lot of time to get the permits and stuff, get the funding, and then you gotta, it takes time to put the water. You have to take the old water out, keep everybody else in line, and you can't do any water replacement in the wintertime because you have to have above ground water access, so they'll run temporary pipes above ground and they freeze in the wintertime. So you can't do that. From April to October, you can do water line replacement, and from November to March, you can't do it because of pipes freezing. That's why it takes,
Terrific.
you only have a little window in between.
Okay. Thank you,
Hopefully
thank you for weighing in.
with the funding we can get from the is it DSI or what is the
DCHD?
DCHD, that we can get the Waynesboro pipe replaced, hopefully. So
Thank you. No more questions,
I
sir.
think
Thank you.
the plan that, and all the work staff has done is excellent. I mean, they're on top of everything. They're getting all the help we can get. So being a small town as we are up here on the top of the Maryland map, we're getting a lot of help from Frederick County and from the state level, so, and grant money that we submitted for them, so hopefully we'll get some of that. Any other questions?
I have a few.
Mr. Ritz?
Well, first comment, I'm happy to see that the MDE is sending out these samplers. That's good news there. So my understanding is that they collected from several locations and the water was perceivably clear at that time.
Yes.
Are they like on call in case we get someone a complaint of brown water, that they would be able to obtain a sample of that brown water for testing?
We would probably call Frederick County.
Okay.
MDE does not respond that quickly.
But it would be an acceptable, what's the term that was used?
Chain of evidence?
Chain of evidence. certified.
Yeah, Frederick County has their own certified samplers and their own lab.
Okay. The levels that MDE is testing for, is that what they offered to test for, or is that what we gave them?
That's what they tested for. This is what they determined. You're talking about the iron, manganese, lead, copper. That's
Exactly.
what they wanted to test for.
Okay, because I know there were some other health concerns raised by some residents, potentially that could be, there were, I think, other elements listed. I know lead was a big one, so I'm glad to see that. But if there were any others,
They would have recommended it.
they would have recommended it. If it comes in the future that there was other, well, hopefully there won't be a future. Everything will be clearing up. I'm knock on wood here. But if it's raised that there are other potential elements that could cause problems, and I know they're not a certified entity, but maybe they could work in conjunction with the county. Mount St. Mary's did offer a
No.
They
potential
rescinded
testing.
that.
They did?
They
I
rescinded
did not
that.
know. When did that happen?
In our meeting with
Right.
the administration, they said
It's a liability.
it's a huge liability on
Okay.
their part because they don't have they're not certified in any way, shape, or form to do that. While they could obviously develop tests without the certification from any national body, they run the risk of
Okay.
a lot of issues with
Did
that.
I miss an email?
No.
Okay. It'd been nice to know that.
Meeting.
No, those were all the things, if you're talking about other things that they should be testing for, I can't recall.
Okay.
These are the ones that they test for. I don't know what else.
I know
they
the big thing is, like, the question's been asked multiple times from multiple individuals. It's like, hey, well, are you actually testing the brown water? And we never really had an opportunity to do so. So it sounds like we do now.
We did test brown water
Okay.
when we went out.
With
and
testing all of these
basically, it
elements
came
that are
back with high
listed.
turbidity, which would be expected.
Just the high turbidity, but there was like no testing of
When we, in one particular,
lead
the one
and
on
other heavy elements.
1330 Wheatley Drive, we did test her water, and lead and copper came back everything came back within their levels.
Okay.
And actually on 318 Mountaineers Way, we did the same, and all his levels came back within. So we have done spot checks on them when people have complained.
Okay.
And we actually went out and saw brown water.
And those results are posted. They're still
They
ones
would have
online?
been, I'm sure they were posted at some point. We posted everything, and then the individuals were given their own results.
Okay, great. And thank you for, I know we had a delay in the agenda because of the letter. We were waiting for the letter. So,
Yes.
And I know that was part of the agenda packet. Just to let you know, I don't know if anyone pointed it out, the link to that letter was not working online.
Okay,
It's it's not even a link.
right. Okay. Yeah, we were busy trying to get the grant out at the same time, so we can fix that going forward.
Great. Maybe even tie it into the water quality page, because I know it was with the agenda.
Right, it should be.
Okay,
Yep, we'll fix that.
Mr. Sweeney?
thank you.
Mr.
Remember, we've
O'Donnell.
got
One moment, please.
I'm finished.
auditors.
Mr. O'Donnell?
I just wondering, there was a hand up in the audience if you want to recognize for a comment, or are you okay
Yeah,
with?
I'll get him to come back up.
Okay,
I'm trying to get through us first.
understood,
And then
understood.
Commissioner Davis, do you have any comments? Commissioner Burns, do you have any comments?
No.
I don't have any either. I'm glad that everything's finally going down the line. Getting.
Don't forget we have the auditor here.
Auditor, yes, I understand. Mr. Charles, come on back up here.
I was just wondering if I was allowed to follow up questions, if I may.
Yes.
In your water quality update that you posted, you indicated in the paper that we were still waiting the results, but we have received the results back for those tests that you've completed?
Not from MDE, no.
Okay, not from MDE. And have we flushed, again, you mentioned that we haven't noticed the water, the brown water since January 22 timeline. Have we done a flushing of the hydrants since that time frame?
No.
No.
But we have done work that have
Okay.
caused high flow.
Okay. And the timeline for the grants versus timeline for the loans, if we apply for the grants, is that a quick turnaround? Is that a 4-month, 6-month turnaround?
MDE and USDA have the same timeline regardless of grant or loan. So it's dependent on their approval.
Okay. Have we dealt with that in the past? I mean, is it a 6-month window?
about
that
a
we're doing?
year.
Oh, wow.
Right.
Okay. Thank
But,
you.
I mean, we've
Yeah.
got the short-term plan we're gonna work
Short-term
through,
plan
and we
is-
can get the one fixed through DCHD.
Yep.
By the time that's fixed, we should know the award from MDE.
Yeah, we can borrow through a low percentage rate loan.
Okay. And then the diaphragm that you're going to replace, and the, was it the regulator as well for the other system? Are those installed specifically to reduce, again, when you have a high demand, i.e. flushing of the hydrants, and you get influx of water? Is that what the purpose of these
No, they run constant.
parts? The diaphragms, were the reducer, the pressure reducers, is that when they come into play, is whenever we have a large flow?
No, they're constant.
Just constant?
So constant flow comes down the mountain. They go into the pressure reducing valve at the Fraley Road.
Okay.
And then, yeah, it does oscillate depending on the flow, but it's a constant thing. It doesn't matter if you're flash hydrants or not.
Okay, so is that to the plant then?
That's
Prior
coming to town.
To the town, okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions?
No, I mean, I did have one I was going to ask the auditors actually specifically, and I know we touched on it in here.
Well, we're gonna get to the auditors.
So I guess
and-
we could just wait till the auditors
Okay.
come up, because they go hand in hand. Thank you.
Alrighty. Treasurer's report?
Yes, sir, thank you. Moving that way.
Oh, I missed consent agenda. Go back to that one.
This represents the cash activity as of January 29th, 2020. The cash balance, January 1st, 2020, page 25 of 41, $5,353,586. Deposits were $459,496. Withdrawals were the amount of $260,491. The operating balance forward at this time, noted, is $5,552,591. Listed are the top 10 check amounts. Staff is here if there are concerns. Additionally, there's a commentary here related to the cash reserve analysis. This is, my spin is it's as a result of the questions that were brought forward at the last meeting regarding reserves and actionable sums to address critical needs.
Correct.
Any questions for treasury report?
I have none.
Hearing none, we'll go on to the next one, consent agenda that I skipped. Sorry.
It's okay.
Proposed dates for multi-user trail. Commissioner O'Donnell?
Yes, sir. These are the volunteer dates I'm submitting for your consideration. Each of these are Sundays, March 15th, April 19th, May 17th. The volunteer days run from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. Individuals who volunteer on the trails for maintenance and such, they come, they're provided breakfast and lunch at that time. There's an additional item, something we have done in the past. We were approached by a bike shop that hopes to do a demonstration day for a company by the name of Pivot. Pivot, to describe them in cycling, is a very high-end company. They wanted to come to Emmitsburg. These are not your off-the-shelf Walmart bikes. These are almost boutique bikes. People spend large sums of money for these bikes. And this is a really good thing for our community because it brings really positive exposure to the community and recreational opportunities here. My hope is the board gives this consideration.
We just need a consent.
Correct.
From everyone.
Yes.
Is everybody okay with the dates he's got proposed?
Yes.
I'm fine too. So you're okay, Mr. O'Donnell?
Great. Thank you all very much.
Planning Commission report?
Yes, as Zach indicated last Monday, the Planning Commission met, and we unanimously approved the 2019 annual report that was presented this evening. We also held our annual elections for officers, and for 2020, the Planning Commission Chair will continue as Keith Surdick, Vice Chair Mark Long, and Secretary Bernard Franklin. And that's all I have. Oh, I'm sorry, we do have a meeting the last Monday of February, and I believe it is the site plan for the Insurance Brokers of Maryland at the former Baldacchino property.
That's correct.
Awesome.
Any questions for planning report? Hearing none, we're going to the agenda items. Yeah, audit report presentation. Michele Mills.
Good evening, Board. Does everyone have a copy of the audit itself? If not, I have extra copies if anybody would need a copy.
I need one. I need one. I never got one.
Yeah, one more.
Ms. Mills and Ms. Blankenstaff are here from DeLone and Stang accounting firm to present the audit results for the fiscal year 2019 for the town of Emmitsburg. I want to thank them ahead of time for all their work and efforts with the audit, and I'll turn it over to Michele and Addie.
Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. Thank you for having us back this evening. We do have a lot of information to present, and so we're going to get started. One of our requirements as your independent audit firm is to communicate certain items to you at the conclusion of every audit. These communications are called required communications, and we thought we would start here this evening. For fiscal year 2019, there were no new accounting policies adopted, and existing policies did not change. There were no transactions that were entered into that lacked authoritative guidance or consensus. We're pleased to report that there were no difficulties in dealing with management in performing and completing our audit. There was one material journal entry that was detected as part of our audit, and we've listed that there, and that was to recognize the leave payout, and it affected the general fund, and the dollar amount was about $41,000. There were no disagreements with management during the course of our audit. As we talk about an audit, it's important to remember everyone's individual responsibilities. The financial statements are the responsibility of management. We frequently start our presentation reminding you of that because too often everyone says that the auditors prepared the financial statements, but management is responsible for them. Our responsibility as auditors is to plan and perform the audit to make sure that the financial statements are free of material misstatement and to express an opinion upon the completion of our audit. The town received an unmodified opinion on their financial statements. Unmodified means it was a clean audit report and that the financial statements were fairly presented. In performing our audit, in addition to doing the audit in accordance with generally accepted auditing standards, we are also required to do it in accordance with government auditing standards, and as such, we have to look at the town's internal control over financial reporting as well as compliance. Professional standards require that we communicate to you in writing anything that is deemed to be a material weakness. And on this slide, we have provided the definition by AICPA professional standards as to what a material weakness is, and we're pleased to report that there were no material weaknesses identified during the most recent audit. There also were no issues of non-compliance identified during the audit. This next slide highlights a few of the things that we wanted to bring to your attention. In fiscal year 2019, the town opened two 500,000 certificates of deposit late in May of 2019. The assessable base increased 3.7%. Your tax rate remained the same. As of June 30, 2019, the town's proportionate share of the net pension liability was approximately $589,000. And again, that is because you are a participant in the Maryland State Retirement Plan. There were no additional debt borrowings in fiscal year 2019, and the principal payments required were just over $291,000. At the end of 2019, the town had over $6.3 million in debt obligations, and of that amount, $313 will be due in the next 12 months.
So now that we kind of did the high high-level overview, we're going to talk about the two required sets of financial statements. Government-wide financial statements and fund-level statements are required by government accounting standards. We're going to start with the statement of net position. Wow, that's kind of hard to see. The total assets for the town are just over 40 million, which was a decrease of 1.8% from fiscal year 18. Of this 40.2 million, we broke it down into the two colors there, which you can see are your governmental activities and your business type activities. There we go. The governmental activities are about 6.6 million, or 16% of that total, and your business type activities comprise the remaining 84%, or 33.6 million. Of that $40.2 million of assets, we're highlighting here the significant assets of our governmental activities. As you can see in the blue, the most significant asset is our capital assets of 3.9 million, or 61%. Next is the cash and cash equivalents of approximately 1.4 million. The investments, which Michele mentioned, were the two CDs that the town opened, were $1 million, or 15%, and a remaining $215,000 in the other category. We're going to compare that to the business type activities, which again, just as a reminder, is your water and sewer fund. So the significant assets for the business type activities, the red is your capital assets, just over 28 million, or 84%. We then have cash and cash equivalents of just about 5.1 million, and a small other balance of approximately 394,000. Our total liabilities for the town as a whole, just about 7.4 million, which is a 5.1% decrease from the prior year. Of that 7.4 million, governmental activities comprise 784,000, or 11% of that balance, and our business type activities had the remaining 89%, or $6.5 million. Again, breaking down those totals by the type. For governmental activities, the liabilities, in the blue, there is other of about 243,000, long-term debt of 203,000, or 26%, and the net pension liability of 338,000, or approximately 43%. Our business type activities, as you can see, of the total, the largest is comprised of our long-term debt obligations, just over 6 million, or 92%. The net pension liability of approximately 251,000, and a small remaining balance of other 267,000.
Before I go into the next slide, notice at the very bottom, you'll see a page number reference. That will lead you back to the audit report. After we leave, if you have any questions or want to know where the numbers are coming from, you can refer back to the specific page of the audit report. As Addie went over, the two required financial statements from the first required statement from a government-wide perspective, again, we were talking based on categories because that's how the audit is broken down, your governmental activities versus your business type activities. And then again, often we made references to the town as a whole. So there's a lot of information being spewed out as we're trying to give you a very high-level view of the financial statements. This next slide is just to introduce some terminology to you. Only in governmental accounting do you see the words deferred inflows and deferred outflows. So we thought it was important to provide you with a definition so you have a reference point, and then again highlight the deferred outflows and deferred inflows for each of the categories. So for deferred outflows for governmental activities, it was just over 101,000, and for business type activities, it was about 83,000, and it was all attributable to the pension reporting. For our deferred inflows, our governmental activities were just over 200,000, and our business type activities were about 78,000. And it included several things, not only some pension-related items, but we had unearned revenues as well as some benefit assessments, and they all kind of roll into that same category. This next slide just gives you what we kind of call the accounting equation. You take your assets and your deferred outflows, and you minus your liabilities and your deferred inflows, and we get something called net position. And you're going to hear us speaking about net position and breaking it down into categories. For governmental activities, you'll see that the total net pension was just over total net position was just over 5.7 million, and for business type activities, the net position was 27 million. And again, this slide just takes the same numbers and shows it to you in the form of the pie chart. And of our net position, 82% of it pertains to business type activities, and the remaining 18 is for your governmental.
The next required government-wide financial statement is the statement of activities, which shows the expenses and revenues of our governmental and business type. So this slide is highlighting the expenses and revenues of our governmental activities. So total expenses were just about 1.8 million. We then break it down into three categories of what we consider to be program revenues. So the first column you can see is charges for services of just under 298,000, operating grants and contributions of about 156,000, and capital grants and contributions of 18,000. So the government activities, majority of their revenue is coming from the far right column, general revenue, i.e. property taxes, income taxes, etc., of just over 1.5 million. If we compare that to our business type activities, total expenses were just about $2 million. The largest bucket of revenues for them is our charges for services of about 1.399 million. There were no capital grants and contributions, and there were general revenues of just under 148,000. Our change in net position government-wide was a decrease of 263,000. If we break that down into the two categories, government activities had a positive change in net position of 212,000, and the business type activities had a decrease of 475,000.
Now we're going to switch our focus to fund level reporting. The previous slides were looking at everything from a government-wide perspective. Now we're going to look at things from a fund level perspective. And back several slides, we're going to go over some of the key differences between the government-wide presentation and the fund level presentation, so kind of bear with me. On this slide, we're looking at the governmental fund types, and you'll see that that includes both the general fund and the capital projects fund. The total assets were just under 2.6 million. The liabilities were roughly 121,000. There were deferred inflows of about 138,000, leaving a fund balance of 2.3 million. Now you're going to see these numbers are much smaller than the numbers that we were presenting when we were talking about from a government-wide perspective. One of the other requirements when we're looking at fund balance, as I mentioned, being 2.3 million, is to categorize it into the following categories. And this is in accordance with the GASB standards. In your audit package is a footnote that explains each of these definitions for your later reference. But again, these are required, I'll just call them required breakouts. Our non-spendable fund balance at the end of fiscal year 2019 was just under 10,000. Our restricted fund balance was 215,000. Our committed fund balance was just under 109,000. We had assigned fund balance of 660,000, and the remaining balance falls into the category as unassigned, and that was just over 1.3 million. This next slide looks at the revenues and expenditures for the governmental fund type, and you'll see that the total revenues were just over $2 million. The expenditures were just over 1.8 million, leaving an excess of revenues over expenditures and other uses of about 220,000. Now, as I mentioned earlier, the reporting standards for government-wide and fund level are very different, and this slide attempts to show that to you. When we're looking at the governmental fund types and we issue debt, it's shown as other financing source. And as I mentioned when we started, there was no additional borrowings, so you didn't see that on the current year's financial statements. But the issuance of debt from a governmental-wide perspective, it shows as a liability. When we're paying back principal on our debt, when we're looking at it from a fund level perspective, it becomes an expenditure. From our government-wide perspective, it's a reduction of a liability. When we are purchasing or constructing assets, it is an expenditure for fund level reporting and an asset when we prepare our government-wide financial statements. Depreciation is not reported in the governmental fund types, but it is an expenditure from a government-wide perspective. And the pension-related items is not reported when you look at the fund level, but is required when we are presenting government-wide. The easiest thing for us to remind you is that when you're looking at it from a government-wide perspective, the intent was for it to operate more like a business. That's how businesses report long-term debt obligations, capital asset purchases. They record depreciation expense and reduce their liabilities when they're making a debt payment. So the intent many years ago when they came up with municipalities must present 2 sets of financial statements was to say your government-wide perspective should mirror that of a commercial business. The next slide just highlights, again, since we're showing 2 different sets of financial statements, how we're getting from a fund level perspective to that government-wide perspective. From a fund level, we said that we had excess of revenue over expenses of $220,000, but yet when Addie was presenting earlier, we talked about the change in net position being about $212,000. In this particular year, the differences weren't significant, but in many years and for many other clients, they can be significant. We had debt service expenditures of about $24,000. Our depreciation expense related to governmental activities was just over $213,000. We had capital outlay purchases or construction cost of about $155,000. There was a change in the compensated absences, which is the accrued leave for the town's employees, of $25,000, and again, the net pension adjustment for this year was quite small. So the purpose of this slide is to make you have an understanding from a fund level perspective to the government-wide, those reconciling items. This next slide, which also has a lot of information on it, just shows you at a quick glance when we're talking about fund balance versus net position. We mentioned that the fund balance governmental funds was just over $2.3 million, but yet when we spoke about net position for the governmental activities, we said it was $5.7 million. And again, these are the reconciling items to get from one reporting level to another. You'll see that property and equipment net of depreciation for governmental activities is quite large. It's about $4 million. We had some deferred outflows related to the pension liability of about $101,000. Our deferred inflows related to the pension were a decrease of about $63,000. And at the very bottom, you'll see the debt obligations that are not reported on the fund level, but are required to be reported on government-wide, accounting for the differences between the 2 reporting models.
Now we're going to switch the focus and talk about the enterprise funds, and this is just a reminder that the town has 2 enterprise funds, both the water and the sewer fund. So we're going to break down the operating revenues and expenses of both the water and the sewer fund. So this slide is showing the revenue and expense of just the water fund. As you can see, there was approximately a 20.2% decrease in operating revenues from fiscal year 18 to fiscal year 19. Operating expenses went from approximately $615,000 to $661,000, or a 7.4% increase. This caused our operating income in fiscal year 18 of $1,500 to create an operating loss in fiscal year 19 of approximately $168,000. We're now going to do the same snapshot of the sewer fund. Our operating revenues in the sewer fund also experienced a decrease of approximately 15.6%. They went from just over $1 million down to $906,000. Our operating expenses had a slight increase of 3.9%, $1.1 million in fiscal year 18 to approximately $1.2 million in fiscal year 19. Again, this caused our operating loss to grow from approximately $91,000 to $304,000 in fiscal year 19. This last slide of a presentation just shows the budget to actual of the general fund. This is a required statement of your financial statements. So it breaks down your original budget compared to your final budget versus the actual results. So I'm just going to focus on the middle two columns, our final budget as compared to actual. Our final budget had approximately 1.8 million of revenues. We came in above that at 1.9 million in revenues, a positive variance of 128,000. Our final budget approximated 1.6 million of expenditures, and the town's actual expenditures were less than budgeted of 1.5 million, a positive variance of 89,000. Our final transfers of 384,000 were the actual results, so there were no variance there. In the bottom line, our net change in fund balance, our final budget had a loss of 152,000. The town actually reported a positive net change of 24,000 with an overall variance of 177,000. We know that was a lot of information to take in, so we are willing to answer any questions that you may have.
But while you're sitting there and trying to absorb it all, I do want to just pause for a moment, and I want to acknowledge all of the town staff for all of their hard work. I know it's easy at the end of the audit to say, shoo, it's done. But, honestly, the work that they do every day should be commended. They had a clean audit report with only one journal entry, no material weaknesses, no significant deficiencies. The staff were completely prepared and ready for the audit. And while some might find that shocking to hear, it doesn't always happen that way. So I do want to commend them for sticking to the schedule and doing what they said they were going to do and making certain that the audit took place as planned. So thank you, Cole and team.
Thank you. Any questions? Commissioner O'Donnell?
Nope, it was preempted in your original statement, the nature of no irregularities and cooperation with the staff. I will fall back to my third question, however. Any suggestions moving forward?
So typically, yeah, if we find anything that doesn't meet the definition of a material weakness or a significant deficiency that we think is important to discuss with management, we do. Unfortunately, I can't recall if we had them or not, but, generally they're things that are just something we came across and said, hey, you might want to consider that. Certainly not of a serious or significant matter.
Okay, thank you. Great.
Commissioner Ritz?
In Ms. Willett's report, there's a reference to the amount of cash that we have in the water fund, and that anything spent in excess would be borrowed from other funds and must be paid back. My understanding is we can't borrow outside of our proprietary funds, correct?
Well, so I think the first thing is just to recognize that you do have separate funds, and we do use fund accounting. And by using fund accounting, they're all separate set of self-balancing accounts. Is it unusual to see interfund borrowings? Some municipalities do it frequently. Some of the larger ones do it very regularly. You guys in the past have not. So I can't say it's prohibited, but generally, if you look at the context for which the enterprise was created, you're saying that it's an activity that we want to account for its operations and make sure we know that the revenues are sufficient to cover our cost. And so that was the premise as to why the enterprise funds were created. And you could borrow between them, but again, it's just a whole series of accounting entries that we would have to assist the town with putting into place to ensure that it was paid back.
And I assume that anything paid back would have to occur in the same fiscal year?
No.
No? Okay, is there a set time?
No.
No.
So, for example, we have one town who recently did this, and for their facts and circumstances, they felt a 5-year payback was appropriate, and that's how they set it. So it would be whatever you would vote and approve.
Okay.
And Mr. Ritz?
That's all I had for that. Just one other question. It was the very last thing we talked about, the slide, the budget to actual, on the general funds, the net change in fund balance. The final budget was about 153,000. Looks like a loss.
Mm-hmm. Are you just inquiring as to why
Yes.
it's a loss? Okay, got it. Let me look at we have it in detail by department and the actual audit report. Let me take a look.
So,
Yes.
yeah, I'd have to do the math. So I think because we transferred more, we intended, I just don't know.
Page is at 44.
44.
Capital fund transfer. Offset isn't.
Yes.
Isn't shown. So I think the majority of it, if you were to go to page 44 of the audit, the last couple lines show our other financing use. The majority of it is our transfer, so that is what you approved, the transfer from the general fund to the capital projects fund.
Okay.
So when we went from the original budget of 232,000 and then increased that transfer to 384,000, the offset that, I would say happened on the top in the revenue, happened in the capital projects fund. And this is only reflecting the general fund pieces. So you're only seeing the outside and not the inside coming in on the capital projects.
I see it now. I was trying
And
to
it's a
do the
timing
math there.
thing. That 384 amount that's listed on the transfers line, that includes the fiscal year 19 budgeted transfer and the additional transfer that was made during the year for the fiscal year 18 excess from the prior year.
Gotcha.
So that's where the 384 comes from.
Okay. Thank you.
And I don't know if it's helpful or not to look at page 13, and that way you see the general fund and the capital projects fund side by side and seeing the in and out that Addie referenced. Page 13, under other financing sources and uses, transfers in and out. One fund it's positive, one fund it's negative.
The 380.
Yep.
About the 385.
That was the total activity for the fiscal year, the current year and the excess from the prior year.
Thank you for explaining that. Appreciate it.
Commissioner Davis?
Just one question. On the enterprise funds we have for water and sewer, how do we track our electricity? Since we do sell electricity?
Sure. That's I guess a whole discussion in itself that we've had before with the board. The electric expenses, when we get the bills from Potomac Edison, if it's water or sewer based, they're expense to those certain departments. As we pay for our solar field, there's a percentage allocation that's made to the general fund, the water fund, and the sewer fund. It's based on a percentage allocation that's been historically used since we started the solar field activity.
Okay, so is there any way to track how we're doing with that? I mean, or is it just, are we making money, we losing money, are we holding our own, are we?
Well, we're using that to pay for the expenses for electric. It's not a money-making project.
Historically, though, you'll see when we present the budget that had we not gone to solar, what the electric rates would be to what we're paying now, and we have a whole presentation on that. So no, it's not a moneymaker, but it's what the town has saved overall over the last 5-6 years on electrical expenses by having it and the offset of charges. We have last year's presentation. If you'd like to see that, that'll give you kind of an idea, or we'll have another presentation come the budget April.
Okay, thanks.
Commissioner Burns?
Just a quick question. As a child of a CFO and a CPA and a mother-in-law who's a CPA, you'd think I would understand this a little bit better, but they actually told me to go the other way from this. On the page, it was government funds with fund balances, non-spendable, restricted, committed, assigned, and everything like that. The unassigned funds. Just quick explanation on that one for me.
So it just truly means
Unrestricted.
undesignated monies.
So back to Commissioner Ritz's point of the ability to possibly transfer funds, that's,
You would look to that bucket. I would
Okay.
believe. Correct.
So,
What are we looking at? I'm
I think it's helpful to look at page 25 just as a reference point,
Okay.
because it does provide all the definitions. But when we say unassigned fund balance, it is just the residual. It means the remaining balance after you've looked at all the other categories, and all of the other categories are more restrictive, either by an act of a resolution or something that was internally done by the commissioners, restricted by an external source potentially. And so after you get through the first four categories of the more restrictive, the remaining balance is kind of the unrestricted.
Yeah.
Okay.
Did I answer that question?
Yeah.
Kind of.
But just my question, it kind of mirrors off of what Commissioner Ritz was, I think, inquiring earlier about the ability to transfer funds into other areas, correct?
If needed.
If needed. There is 1.3 million of unassigned funds.
So here's the typical accountant response. So fund balance doesn't necessarily mean cash.
Correct.
So that's why we kind of went through the accounting equation. So I would say assets minus the liabilities equal what's left over, which is your fund balance. So your fund balance doesn't mean it's liquid, because I've got assets above that might not be liquid, and I have liabilities that I need to satisfy. So if you're really looking at what cash is, I'd say cash is cash.
Okay. Just when you see the word unassigned, you
Yeah.
start to.
So that would be, things that, available for expenditure, but not necessarily meaning cash sitting in the bank.
Okay.
Thank you.
Just a lot of money that says unassigned
Yeah.
to it.
Any other questions? I just have one. On the operating renewal and expenses property for the funds for sewer water, we are not meeting, we are losing, correct?
Yeah, so the majority of that decrease that you saw in the revenue for both is in fiscal year 18. The town collected a lot of money in tap fees from the Seton Center project. And then that same activity of having a big construction and collecting, I think it was over like $116,000 of tap fees, didn't occur in fiscal year 19. So
Right.
that-
There was only about 16 this current year that we're looking at. So your revenues that you get from the water usage in the water and sewer are fairly consistent year to year. Where the big difference is your tap fees that you have, and they're based on the timing of when the activity occurs. So if there's growth within the town itself, the town collects those tap fees. It's right to the bottom line and you'll see them directly in these numbers as you go year to year. So those types of things can really help out how the numbers look at the end of the year. And some of that is based on timing, and hopefully we'll get some of that this year with a couple of new businesses coming in.
And that's where we tend to want to focus when we're presenting to you what the operating income or loss is, so that you have an indicator, because that can lead you to different decisions as you look at that. And so if you're looking at what's in operating expenses, depreciation expense is significant for both the water and the sewer fund because of the significant infrastructure improvements that have been made over time. And these are multi-million-dollar projects that are being depreciated over 40 to 50 years. And so if you look back, as you were talking about some major improvements in the past, I mean, you're getting hit with depreciation expense every year as a result of those improvements that you've done in the past.
But our assets will go up. If we replace these new lines within the next couple of years, our assets will go up.
Yep.
And back to the question of the tap fees, it's good as you're looking at the numbers, look at prior years to see the general pattern that you might see in the town. So you might have one year where in the water and sewer it looks better than other years, but you'll see the timeline over a certain amount of years, and you can get a better sense of how things are going and how things may be going forward.
Thank you. That's all I have. Any other questions? Thank you, Ms. Mills, for presenting it.
Thank you very much.